Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear Chairman of the Arctic Circle, President Grimson, a warm welcome from my side for the panel this afternoon, right after lunch. So we try to get you up now to energy again about green hydrogen energy for a zero-carbon future. My name is Christoph Wolff. I'm the CEO of the Smart Freight Center that sets the international carbon standard for supply chains. And I would like to first welcome my distinguished panel and introduce my panel. So there's, on the far right, there's Julie Shuttleworth, leader of Green Global Growth, Fortescue Future Industries. Then we have Hörður Arnarson, CEO of the National Power Company of Iceland. We have Jonas Moberg, CEO of Green Hydrogen Organization, and Johannah Christensen, CEO of the Global Maritime Forum. Before we come to the panel, so let me give you a few opening remarks to frame our conversation. Hydrogen has a lot of promise. Some people say there's a lot of hype. If you picture the future energy system of the world without fossil fuels, hydrogen will play an important role, and everybody is agreeing to that. But it's that molecules and electrons, so direct electrification through electrons, and indirect electrifications through molecules are complementary, and they work in different ways in different industries. If I go from right to left, in the power and heat industry, which is the world's largest CO2 emitter, direct electrification will play an enormous role through renewable energy, through renewable heat, etc. But there is a role for hydrogen as well. It's also clear that in short-range passenger transportation, so in cars, especially for cities, it will be better electric. Yeah? But if you come to long-range transport, like in trucks and heavy trucks and buses, that it will be a mix depending on the weight and the size and the capacity of the truck as such. When we come to aviation and shipping, and some of you may have seen the aviation session yesterday, it's very clear that we would for the large extent need a hydrogen derivative as a source of power. And when it comes to heavy industry, basically the base of economy, of prosperity and growth, it will largely be on hydrogen basis. This is true for the steel industry, this is true for chemicals, for refining, and for cement. And as you see, so it will be a puzzle. It will be a mix of different sources which will actually ensure a zero-carbon future. Because of that, there's a huge demand and a huge demand rise for hydrogen. Between now and 2050, in a zero-carbon world, there will be a multiplication of demand at least by the factor of 8, if not more. And the biggest part of that, as you can see on this slide, will be in industry, so this is more than 50%, and in heavy-duty mobility. Now, where will this come from, and where will this be built, and where will it be used? As you can see, this is just a snapshot. The 520 projects are at any point of time, and every day there's more. And you can see that Australia, and glad to have Fortescue Future Industries here, will emerge as a major production hub. Yeah, so we'll see Chile as a major production hub. Maybe the Middle East. I mean, there's a lot of development there. China is doing its own development. Japan and Korea have very early, basically, propagated the use of hydrogen in transport and have pioneered some of the use cases. And there's some recent policy changes or policy developments, and we will probably get to that. For example, the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States that gives a lot of tax credits and subsidies to green hydrogen development and production there. So we will see the landscape is moving also where new plants, where new production is being developed in order to satisfy this huge rise in demand. When it comes to hydrogen, we typically talk about two parts of hydrogen. And I won't go deep into technology, but today, basically, almost all hydrogen comes from a process which is called steam methane reforming, a process which in itself produces a lot of CO2. So we need hydrogen for ammonia, for fertilizers. That's one of the biggest use cases, and it's being currently used with a lot of CO2 production. So one way of getting with that is basically to capture the carbon out of that stream. It's called the blue hydrogen. But what we are actually all planning for, that maybe at best be a transition, is the green hydrogen. And the green hydrogen actually converts renewable energy, as you've seen in the movie before, via electrolysis. That you probably all know from school, from the chemical, from the chemical lessons. You have electrolyzers, you put water, and then, you separate hydrogen and oxygen. And this technology is now there's many companies in the world that actually work on making this more efficient because it takes a lot of energy to do that. The cost will come down significantly. Yeah, so the projection is that by 2030 to 2040, the costs for a kilo of hydrogen are going down to roughly $1 per kilogram. So the subsidy that the US currently is now giving since like 4 weeks of $3 per kilogram is significant, yeah, and it does change the game. And you will see a new landscape of exporters, of producers, and of importers. So Saudi Arabia, Chile, Australia, Spain, and southern Germany. So they will all they're all trying to ramp up because they have very low energy costs. And Iceland, actually, or northern Scandinavia fits right into that. And obviously, like others like Korea and Japan will rather be importers. Now, the question for our panel are around these three, which and we will come more elaborate in a minute. So what are the key use cases to drive adoption of green hydrogen? And what is the role of the Nordic countries and the Arctic? Could there be a hub for green hydrogen? And what will be the impact of geopolitics on supply routes and ramp up? So with that, I'm joining my panel. And the first question goes to Julie. So Fortescue, one of the world's largest iron ore mining companies, and mining is not exactly known for being very environmentally minded, recently announced a fully costed decarbonization roadmap for this decade delivery. And it was one of the first major heavy industry companies to do so. How does green hydrogen fit into your plans?
Thank you. Fortescue is a huge carbon emitter, and we're doing something about it. We will decarbonise our mining operations, which is Scope 1 and 2 emissions, by 2030. Green hydrogen, green ammonia, and renewable electricity all play a key part in achieving this plan. We have huge operations in Australia. We are going to show the world that heavy industry can decarbonise profitably. We will save over $800 million in operating costs each year by eliminating 700 million litres per year of diesel, 15 million gigajoules per year of gas, and at the same time eliminating 3 million tonnes of carbon emissions each year. So how does hydrogen play into this? We have already demonstrated last year in our workshop environment that we can run a huge haul truck on hydrogen. These haul trucks, when fully loaded, weigh 400 tonnes. We've already converted a locomotive engine to run on ammonia. These trains in our operations are over 3 kilometres long and carry 35,000 tonnes of iron ore. And we've already got the blend of ammonia to over 80% in that mix. And we've also done in the workshop environment, tested a ship engine cylinder to run on ammonia. So we've done all the technology demonstration. The next step for us is to get this in the operating environment. We've bought a ship, a 75-metre long ship, to convert to green ammonia. And we're doing that right now, converting its engines to run on ammonia. Right now in construction, in our Australian mine site, we're building a green hydrogen refuelling station. And this will run off our solar plant, which is already there in operation. That renewable electricity from solar will feed into electrolysers, and by the electrolysis of water will make green hydrogen. And that green hydrogen, early next year, will be fuelling a fleet of coaches that will drive our workers around the mine site. This refuelling station will also refuel a huge mining haul truck to run on hydrogen. green hydrogen. And it will run an excavator and a dual rig to run on green hydrogen. This is the world first for any mining company to have green hydrogen running at this scale in the operations. And we're going to test liquid hydrogen and gaseous hydrogen. So we're going to learn a lot from getting these huge mining equipment in the operating environment, working with our mine sites, and we're going to learn and continue to improve on those prototypes so that by 2025, we've got hundreds of mining trucks being converted to run on zero emissions fuel. So that's our Scope 1 and 2 emissions. What's really important for us as an iron ore mining company is also Scope 3 emissions. Last year, we estimated those to be at about 250 million tonnes of carbon. And that's from the steelmaking process where coal is used in that blast furnace. It's critical that the world decarbonise the steel industry because it's about 8% of global carbon emissions. So we're doing test work on electrochemical reduction of iron ore to convert to green iron, and also using green hydrogen and green ammonia to convert that iron ore into green iron. And we've got that pilot plant test work already underway. It's very important for us that we take action in this space. To support these decarbonisation efforts, several years ago, Fortescue created the green energy arm called Fortescue Future Industries, focused on developing this technology to decarbonise our operations, but also to develop a portfolio of projects around the world to develop and produce green hydrogen and green ammonia to not only supply ourselves the energy we need, but to provide the world the green energy it needs to decarbonise. And our target is to make 15 million tonnes of green hydrogen per year by 2030. And we'll be delivering a lot of that into Europe. Another aspect is the supply chain for green hydrogen. And the manufacturing of electrolysers is something that we've committed to do. We've got a facility under construction right now in Australia. It will make 2 gigawatts per year of electrolysers, which almost doubles the world's current production. We'll do that next year, and we'll ramp up quickly after that once we've optimised that first train, not just in Australia, but we'll be able to replicate that around the world. So there's a lot of things that Fortescue and Fortescue Future Industries are doing in the green hydrogen space. Green hydrogen is a critical part of decarbonising the planet, as well as green ammonia, renewable electricity. It's a combination of all of those avenues. And it's really important that we all take action, and we want to show that heavy industry can decarbonise. The planet is cooking, so we actually need to get cracking on these projects. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Hörður, you are the CEO of the National Power Company of Iceland. Our opening question to you is, how do you think green hydrogen will develop in Iceland, and how may that be different from the rest of the world?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in many ways it will develop in similar ways, and how we are in Landsvirkjun are approaching this interesting project, it's in a very similar way as we see our sister companies, for example, in Scandinavia. But there are also those special characteristics in Iceland that creates opportunities and also a little bit different approach to the other countries. First of all, the Icelandic government has set ambitious goals, with regards to obligation to the Paris Agreement, and also set goals that they want to become free of fossil fuel at the year 2040. And this is obvious that hydrogen will play an important role, in that journey, at least based on the technology that is available today. We are also in a rather unusual situation, which is a good situation, that we have already now 85% of our primary energy use in Iceland is renewable, which is the highest in the world. This is mainly hydro and geothermal, and our electricity systems and our space heating systems are 100% renewable. This means that to reach our goals in decarbonation, we need to focus on fossil fuel in transportation or mobility. We have to take that out if we're going to reach our goals. And it's obvious, as I said earlier, that the green hydrogen will play an important role there, together with direct electrification, which is of course very positive when we can use that, and we see the technology is growing there, and we can go further than we believed with direct electrification that we believed a couple of years ago. With regard to also with hydrogen, is that we see also in your presentation is that the growth in green hydrogen in the years, coming years in many countries will be linked to industries, will be linked to feedstock for industries, where they are currently using hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives in their energy, a grey hydrogen. In Iceland, we don't have industries like that, so that are using hydrogen. So our focus will not be in producing hydrogen for the feedstock for industries in Iceland. Also, we have already taken significant goals with regard to using our green energy for heavy industry, for aluminium industries, and we want to continue to do that to help them to reduce their carbon footprint. So we see more focus there, at least in the coming years, than to export hydrogen as a feedstock. Although that is a very important project, and we acknowledge that and fully understand that goal target. So we can say that we don't have maybe low-hanging fruits, both with regard to the decarbonization, because we cannot do space heating and we cannot do the electricity system, which is relatively straightforward, known technology. We have to focus on the mobility, and the same with the green hydrogen. There's a strong clear offtake in the industry for green hydrogen, where we need to focus on the mobility sector, where there is, where there needs to be quite a lot of development for the offtake and also for the infrastructure for the green hydrogen. We see this as a great opportunity. We don't see this as an obstacle. We see a great opportunity to be one of the first countries in the world to be fossil-free, fuel-free country, and we want to build expertise and knowledge that we can on this important issue. We are currently developing two hydrogen-based projects. The first one focusing on hydrogen for heavy land-based transportation, and the second producing methanol for the maritime industries. And in both projects, we want to take final investment decision together with our partners, both partners in the producing of the hydrogen or the methanol with technology knowledge, but also partners for the offtake, which is critical for these projects. We want to take that in 2023, which is what, we are very focused on that. And we see Iceland kind of as a perfect partner for companies that want to develop solutions and test hydrogen for the green hydrogen solution for mobility. We have cost-effective, reliable green energy. We have strong focus from the community and from the government of becoming fossil-free. We are a small market, well situated for testing and testing new ideas. And also very importantly, we don't have any lobbyism from the fossil industry, from the oil industry. So we think we are a good test, and we will, focus on this difficult part of the mobility part, and we need it. We need it for our commitments. We will not reach our Paris Agreement unless that, and definitely not the target in 2040. So we see this as a very exciting journey.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So Jonas, you're leading the Green Hydrogen Organization. So you're speaking and working with a lot of sectors and organizations. So my question to you is, so up to a quarter of final energy use is likely to involve green hydrogen. So what do you see the Arctic potential as a global energy and industry map is being redrawn at this stage?
Well, thank you, Christoph, everyone. It's great to be here, and it is the big question. So just so we're clear, as Julie said, the planet is cooking. The Arctic is, of course, cooking worse than anywhere else. We have already seen a temperature rise of 3 degrees. I think we all know that since 1980. The fact is also that there are huge amounts of potential, as we've just heard, in the Arctic region playing a major role in the decarbonization. We know that 75% of the climate heating gases come from the use of fossil fuels. That has to stop as quickly as possible. And you're very lucky that you don't have lobbying by the fossil fuel industry. That creates a head start in many ways. Yeah. The first thing I think then, if we start to look at the solutions that we need to look at or remember is, we're not just going to tweak the way we supply energy to our society. We're going to redraw our industrial maps and the way our economies are screwed together. Today, we produce steel where it suited where we had iron ore, and where we had coal. We have been refueling ships where we have had plenty of oil. We have produced fertilizers where we have plenty of gas, and so on and so forth. All of these things are now starting to move, because the critical thing is not where we have that sort of energy, but to much greater extent, where do we have access to renewable energy, to solar, wind, hydro, and so on, and where can we therefore produce energy through electrolysis, that we have heard what it is, we can transport and manipulate that energy in a way we haven't done before. Okay? So, what does that mean for the Arctic concretely? Well, let's just do a very quick sort of sweep around. And maybe we come back to where we are at the moment. Let's start in Sweden, where I come from. So we're starting to see a couple of new steel projects. They don't have a huge amount of renewable energy. They don't like to build too many wind turbines. They're trying to work on it, but they're pretty slow and bureaucratic about it. We also, of course, have Norway. They've got their ports that are open all year round. There will be some steel production and some hydrogen production relatively early. I think we can leave Russia for now for a number of different reasons, partly political, but also they have so much cheap gas that they're going to struggle for a long time to take this seriously. In Canada and the US, they have huge amount of technology that is becoming available, and as Christoph said, they are now offering up to 3 kilos of incentives per kilo of hydrogen produced in forms of primarily tax credits. That is giving a huge boost on the American side. So they have that, they have technology, they've got land, they've got easy use of renewable energy. They've got ports. All of that will start to play roles for using these things. If we then look at Greenland, and if I may also Iceland, there is a huge amount of renewable energy potential, and you are very central on aviation routes, and we will, as we've heard, see a lot of hydrogen-derived fuel in the decades to come on the aviation side, but also you're very central on a number of the ship routes, as Johannah will say more about. So my take there is there's enormous amount of potential. If I may then, Christoph, just to say one other thing. We got, of course, to do this responsibly, taking our communities with us. Otherwise, we're doomed. We have made a little contribution together with Fortescue and some other companies called the Green Hydrogen Standard. It says things about how small the emissions have to be, because there are some small emissions. They're not high, but they are not nil. Secondly, huge amounts of things, and something we've spoken about, how do we bring our communities with us? How do we get permits fast in all of our societies, while at the same time build trust and make sure that our societies think that we actually need this infrastructure? And this is something that we need to focus on with an absolute dedication to make sure that we have the social license that we need.
Thank you very much. Johannah, as the CEO of the Global Maritime Forum, so obviously shipping and maritime is a sweet spot. And it has actually a dual role, yeah? So the fuels of the future will probably not be produced where they are going to be used. And then the maritime sector itself could be a big demand center. So how can maritime actually be a force for good to accelerate green hydrogen and products?
Well, I think, thank you, Christoph. Julie and others have already pointed to the important role that off-takers play in developing green hydrogen as a global source of energy use. And while the shipping sector as a whole is not on the kind of timeline that Fortescue is, nonetheless, what we see is that for the shipping sector to decarbonize fully, zero-emission fuels and vessels need to be deployed at scale within this decade. And There is the potential for direct electrification of, for example, coastal shipping like ferries or coastal fishing. But for international deep sea shipping, we need fuels that have a much higher energy density, and that can be transported over long distances as well, and that it can store energy over longer distances as well. And that's where green hydrogen comes into the picture. In the context of shipping, it will likely be in the form of a hydrogen derivative. So green ammonia or green methanol are leading candidates at this time for this. And we're talking about a significant scale. So we're looking in shipping alone to replace about 300 million tons of fossil fuel per year. It is an enormous amount of fuel that needs to be replaced. And so, and on a very, very short timeline in sort of global energy and infrastructure terms, if you will. So that also represents a huge future demand for green hydrogen, where we see shipping can play a really important role as a strong early source of offtake for green hydrogen, which can both make projects such as those that you mentioned earlier become a reality, but also help drive down costs and ultimately drive uptake across other sectors. Where we also see the potential is as a role of supporting green hydrogen as a globally traded commodity. So shipping green hydrogen from where it can be produced cheaply to where it needs to be used in other industrial sectors, be that cement, steel, et cetera, if production and usage can't easily be married. I think there's probably at least a transitory role until we arrive at the retooling that you mentioned, Jonas, this sort of complete global retooling of where things get produced effectively, right? So I think this is a really important role, as well as in replacing gas in its existing role in power sectors in big countries, right? So this is where we see the huge potential, and time is running. So this is something that really we're on a very fast trajectory. Lots needs to happen within this decade.
Yeah, thank you very much. So while I'll give Hörður the chance to react to some of the points that Jonas raised, so I'm starting to look around in the audience. So if there's somebody who would like to ask a question, so yes, right there. Here, a short round of questions from the audience, and then I'll come back on some of. Please.
Hi, I'm Emily Dahl. I'm with the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. I was wondering, for shifting to this hydrogen economy, how much, both in shipping and in ground transportation, do you anticipate being able to be retrofits of existing fleets versus needing to bring on new vehicles, new ships, and in the circular economy context, what's going to happen to the obsolete ships if not all of it is retrofits?
Is that a good... Julie.
Maybe I'll just comment, because we've got 8 of our very large ore carriers. They're 330 metres long. They carry 275,000 tonnes of material. And there's thousands of ships around the world. Clearly, they're not all going to want to be made obsolete and not used. So what we're working on is converting existing engines to run on ammonia injection. We've done that on our locomotive already, as I mentioned, over 80% ammonia going into the locomotive engine, and we're doing the same with the ships. So to the point that you don't have to go and just stand down all the old ships, you can convert them. And the same with trains.
Yeah. Johannah? Some additional?
No,
okay.
Perfect. Nothing to add.
Thank you. Rocky Whites. I'm the director of the Maritime Studies program at the Fletcher School. Sorry to dominate here. I wanted to ask you about the total fuel cycle. And when you think of green ammonia versus green methanol, which do you think is better?
Johannah, that's a question for you.
Well, ultimately, it's not an easy question, to be totally honest. So from a pure environmental standpoint, of course, green ammonia wins out, because there's not that going back of the cycling of the carbon back into the atmosphere. That being said, from a point of wanting to decarbonize international shipping in the short term, methanol can play a key role because it can be deployed in near existing, with small modification to existing systems. So in other words, we can have the first zero-emission vessels, net zero-emission vessels running in the next couple of years as we prepare to transition fully to ammonia. I think there are also safety concerns that need to be addressed in the context of the usage of ammonia on board ships, and that's one of the barriers that needs to be overcome. It's a question of getting the right kind of systems in place to support that, safety measures, etc., but that just needs to get done. So.
Great. Glad the Fletcher School is in line with the answer. Good answer. Cool. More, please.
Hello, my name is Iluna. I'm a Greenlandic student. And I was wondering, you mentioned there's great possibilities for implementing green hydrogen in the Arctic. What are some of the barriers or possibilities to include like the public in this? How can you engage them?
For you.
I think this is a very, very good question, and I think if we look at as Jonas said, the journey that needs to take place, when we are shifting from the fossil energy to green energy, we cannot produce the green energy where it's used. The big cities and the countries with big populations. So we have to use land somewhere else. Which has to be done in very good cooperation with the local people, and we have to face that this will have impact on environment, and we have to do it in a very responsible way. I agree with Jonas, but unless we have to get projects moving. The problem with the permitting process all over the world, it takes a huge amount of time, and at the same time the planet is cooking. So I think we have to find ways to do it. We have to build trust, but we also have to face that what we are doing today with the fossil energy is unsustainable, even though we don't live close by it. With regard to which is better, methanol or ammonia, I think we have to be careful with those thoughts. I think we have to be very open-minded for everything. The world we have to develop everything, and most likely different derivatives will be used in different places. The worst thing if the industry starts competing, telling that the other one is not good, then this, we need to stick together on this, not to compare it.
Question right here.
Hi, I'm Yurja from the Fletcher School as well.
More Fletcher School, great. Cool place.
I wanted to ask, why doesn't it make sense for Iceland to export green hydrogen to Europe? Because you already have the existing renewable energy to produce green hydrogen.
That's a good question. I was going to answer the same. I mean, I'm living in Germany, so we obviously have a lot of energy dependency, which in these days is very unfortunate. Yeah. And our foreign minister or ministers go across the world. I'm sure they have come to Iceland already.
Yes, again a good question. And of course we have the same things here in Iceland as all the Arctic nations, and we have to get social acceptance for what we do. And today, we are focusing on e-fuels that help us in the mobility sector. And there is no market for exporting e-fuels for mobility in Europe, because there is no market for mobility, and it's not there yet. So we don't believe that the feedstock projects will help us. We say these are good projects, but we are already, as I said, exporting a lot of energy through making heavy industry green, the aluminum industry, the silicon metal industry. These are just as good projects as the feedstock projects, so we are focusing on that. But I would not exclude in the future that we would export some e-fuels, because I strongly believe Iceland should be self-sufficient in energy, and personally a net exporter. But that does not mean that we produce all the derivatives, but just as you said before, it will be a mixture. It will not be one silver bullet that will work for everything. So we might be producing a lot of ammonia here in Iceland, but importing e-kerosene, but on the balance. So we will, but in the time being, where we are also getting social acceptance for the journey that we are on, we believe that we should focus on the mobility, and we are also seeing a lot of interest from industries coming to Iceland, especially in the food processing industry, in all kinds of green industries, where there is a good social support for. So it's just a matter of priority. But exporting for feedstock is not our priority today. But we strongly say these are good projects. And for 10 years ago, we would have jumped up and signed a contract. But now we have such big demand that we have to select.
Thank you. There's another question there.
Yes, hello. My name is Maria Altman. I'm a freelance journalist from Sweden. I wonder what will happen to all these circles on the map when it comes to the ongoing energy crisis. I mean, electricity is super expensive, and you need so much electricity to produce this green hydrogen.
Jonas.
Yeah. Yes, we need a huge amount, and we're going to build that capacity because there is no other way we can decarbonize our society. So we're going to see huge amounts of the expansion of the renewable energy capacity. Which of those circles, I think, is largely... we'll have to see. I think we'll see, obviously, some of the places where it will happen first, either because they have really good renewable energy or because of the location. I personally think that there are a number of those circles up in the Arctic that are likely to happen relatively soon. As we've just heard, I think one aspect that is really important to remember about all of this is until now, we have produced virtually no green hydrogen. We are now going from 0 to 60 in a very short period. As you heard from Johannah, there are many really big issues here we haven't quite worked out. We just know we've got to do it. There are no other ways to avoid climate disaster. So it's a very, very rapid technological evolution towards these fuels, towards these solutions. And I'm sure a lot of those circles will happen up here.
And when it comes to the cost, I think it's really important to realise that the cost of renewable energy, the technology, keeps bringing the cost down continuously. You cannot say what's going to happen with the fossil fuel price. But you know that the renewable energy cost and the cost of green hydrogen will keep coming down, especially as we keep building at scale, that will keep driving the cost of renewable energy and green hydrogen down.
Excellent. I see there's more questions. I really like that. Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Gustav Siegman, and I'm sad to say I don't belong to the Fletcher School.
Not yet.
Not yet. I work as a research advisor at Nord University in Norway, and I'm also affiliated to an EU-funded project called Just North. As you know, the EU is quite engaged when it comes to fighting climate change and has adopted the EU climate law. And this is a general question for the panel. To what extent has this law actually had an impact on the decisions of your countries, but also other European countries, in adopting a more green profile when it comes to green hydrogen? Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I would like, because we are, coming to the end of our session, start the final round. So maybe Julie, you can take this question, and it would be great to talk about a little bit about the Green Deal in Europe and what difference it makes, maybe towards other policy environments. But over, Julie.
Well, firstly, for us, Fortescue, to decarbonise our operations, what's happening in Europe has no influence at all in terms of policy, because we're doing that because it's firstly good for the planet and it will actually save us our operating costs. It's the right thing to do, we're doing it. But when it comes to making green hydrogen from our global portfolio of projects, any type of policy, any type of incentives, any type of permitting or approvals that can be done quickly, that all has a very positive impact on where you're going to develop your green hydrogen projects. It's critical that we get going. We need these projects to get under development and construction immediately. We need to learn from those first projects, apply those learnings into the next projects, drive the costs down so that green hydrogen, renewable electricity, is by far the cheapest source of energy. So people do it, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it actually makes the most commercial sense. Planet's cooking, we all need to take action. Policy is a big part of that, but it's not everything.
Thank you.
I agree that we have to get going, and we have to remember how we did with wind and solar, how we by pushing it that we were able to get the reliability and costs down. So I think we really have to get going and start the project, learn from it, and develop it. But I think also we always have to remember in what situation we are today, because we have to make several difficult decisions of land use and using the Arctic for energy production, which is sensitive, will be difficult and costly. But at the same time, we have to remember what our energy system is built today, with the fossil industry, with terrible environmental impacts when they are producing it, terrible environmental impact on the climate. So we often in the discussions, one would think that the current situation is something very nice. It's completely unsustainable. We have to act even though it's not in our backyard.
Yes, absolutely. Jonas.
Time is up in more ways than one. And we need leadership.
Johannah?
Jonas, you make it so hard to follow you, as usual.
You can only confirm that.
I can only confirm that. I will say, just to respond to the question specifically, for shipping policies, enormously important. EU has been a leader by including shipping in EU ETS, has a huge catalytic role to play for the uptake of green fuels in shipping, and we hope the IMO will follow suit, our global regulator.
Excellent. Very good. Let me thank you for the questions from the audience, not only the Fletcher School, but everybody. And my distinguished panel. There's a lot of hope for hydrogen. We're also looking forward to Iceland playing a bigger role in becoming an exporter in due time. And thank you very much for being here.